How do I figure out what's next in my career? How do I align my work with what matters most to me? And the biggest question of all, can I really design a career that I love? Hey, my name is Jen Smith, and I believe career success doesn't have to come at the expense of living a radiantly happy and healthy lifestyle. As a former HR leader and recruiter turned career coach, I've seen how traditional career paths can leave people burned out or boxed in. And I know there's a better way, one that invites you to let go of outdated rules and outside expectations, one that supports meaningful growth over time. Whether you're feeling stuck, craving more, or ready to expand within your current role and beyond, this show is for you. So grab your coffee or your kombucha, pull up a seat, and get ready to explore practical, modern strategies for building a meaningful, heart-based career, because you deserve a long, radiantly happy, and healthy career. This is the Flourish Careers Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the Flourish Careers Podcast. I'm Jen Smith, your host, and I'm thrilled to be here with you for season 10. This season is all about flourishing together. We have a full lineup of heartfelt, insightful conversations with incredible guests. Each episode is a curated conversation designed to inspire, uplift, and offer practical wisdom to help you flourish in your career and beyond. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Jena Dunay. Jena is the founder of Recruit the Employer, an outplacement and career development firm. She started her career out on Wall Street, working in investment banking and at the New York Stock Exchange. From there, she spent 10 years in the learning and development space, from trainer to chief learning officer at a variety of growing organizations. Jena has 48,000 followers on LinkedIn. She is a LinkedIn learning instructor with 162,000 students and has been featured on Business Insider, Forbes, Harvard Business Review, The Skim, and The Muse. Jena hosts 2 podcasts. One is called Culture Uncovered, and that goes behind the scenes of the coolest companies to work for. And the other is a faith-based podcast called My Southern Godmother with her 70-something mentor, Debbie French. And it is so delightful. Jena lives in Franklin, Tennessee with her fellow Pittsburgh native husband, 2 kiddos, and a super nervous sheepadoodle named Hank. Fun fact, Jena and I have been connected for several years. We first met back in 2019, just before I left my corporate job to launch Flourish Careers. And I had the honor of joining her Recruit the Employer program as a coach. And I've seen firsthand the incredible impact her work has on job seekers and those in transition. She's truly one of the best in this space. Jena, welcome to the show.
Jen, it is so fun to be back with you. We haven't chatted in so long, and I'm just thrilled to be on your podcast. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. This is going to be a fun topic. So we are going to talk all about discerning company culture and creative ways to land the interview. So let's start with culture. And I feel like everyone talks about company culture, but it's not always clear exactly what that means. So in your world of work, how do you define it?
I think actually company culture needs to be defined by the person that is going to be employed there. So meaning you as the individual need to think about, what do I value in a company culture and what does culture mean to me? Because I've talked to thousands of people over the years, whether they're job seekers or even just chief people officers, and everybody has a different definition of what culture is. And so for you as a job seeker specifically, you need to be thinking about, what does it mean to have a good culture? What do I practically mean by that? Do I mean that I want them to have really cool perks? Do I mean that I want them to have training programs? Does it mean that I want to be able to have flexibility in my work? What does great culture mean to you? And that's how it should be defined, not by how the world says a ping pong table is really cool and hey, we give everybody 6 weeks off. That may not be what you value. So it's really about knowing your values first, which I know you talk about, Jen, and then defining your culture from that.
Yes, that's such a great way to think about it. And it kind of leads to what I think about with career development is your heart-based career planning. So that alignment with a company that's going to meet your needs in this season of career. So what are you looking for? What are your values? And going out and finding the organizations that align to that and have that culture that's going to support you. Now, one of the things that I find interesting is, and this is in my own experience, and I'm just curious if you've talked to people where this has come up, is sometimes company culture could be different depending on the division or the part of the organization you work in. So have you found that as you talk to folks?
Absolutely. So that's actually a really important part of the equation. I'm so glad you asked that question because there's the overarching culture of an organization, right? So their values, they might have values that are integrity, their excellence, their whatever the things are. But then if you get down into the subdivision, I call it subcultures of organizations. So it's just as important to understand if you're a marketing person, like what's the marketing culture? If you're on the accounting team, what's the accounting culture, right? Or if maybe you're on the software developer, right? Like you're a software engineer. Like, what does the development team look like? Being very specific about, okay, what's the organization's culture? But then in the interview process, if you get to the point where you have an interview, is really understanding how does this department work? Because that matters more. I'll give you an example. So I started my career out working on Wall Street, and I worked for Citibank. Citibank is a massive, massive organization. I honestly couldn't tell you 5 words to describe their culture. No idea, right? But the department that I was in, they actually taught me this really, really early on. While investment banking was not for me, it was like 80-hour work weeks plus, like I was an insane human. The culture of the department that I was in, healthcare investment banking, I really liked those people. And I liked them for a couple of reasons. One, they tried to have fun, even in the midst of having to work 80-hour work weeks. They were really into development. And just generally, I got good vibes from the people that I was working with. And I would say that that was true, even though I ended up leaving. But the head of that department set the tone. And so in my interview process, I was able to actually discern for that. And I would actually recommend for people to go into that department back then. It's obviously probably changed since then. But that subculture was a more important thing to vet for than the overall culture of a Citibank.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that example. I've totally experienced that so many times. And I think you can read about company culture on an internet, but then really understanding how it's practiced in the day-to-day is getting to that subculture level. And I've even seen it where there's different quote unquote cultures on different floors of a building or an organization even. So,
that's so true.
It can get to that level. So the subculture, I think, is really where we want folks to understand. And sometimes I like to describe culture as almost like the personality of the team or the department, and then the company that you're working for. So I think that's kind of what you were describing with fun, development, good vibes. Like that's like a personality.
Yeah, it's absolutely a personality. And I would also say that when you're thinking about the subculture of an organization, you got to think about why people leave companies. Like think about if you're a job seeker and you've ever left an organization, why did you leave the organization? 9 times out of 10 that we like to say it's not because of top leadership. It's usually because of your manager. And your manager is in your subculture. They're in your department. And so being really clear about who is leading you specifically in your department and will impact your day-to-day, will impact your retention rate at that organization and your willingness to grow within. So I think focusing on the subculture is actually way more important than the overall culture, though that is important too, because it does, quote unquote, set the tone.
Yes, 100% agree. And you hit on a really good point because I want to talk with folks that are trying to figure out what the company culture is really like. So again, reading the website, whatever, like really getting a peek behind the tent. So you mentioned a couple things like who's going to be leading you. So who is your manager? What are they really like? Why are people leaving? What's the tenure/retention at this organization? So what are some other like either subtle or surprising signs to figure out a company culture?
One of the red flags that I always find, and it's funny because there are some organizations where this I think is true. I hate the phrase, Jen, we're like a family.
Same.
No, I do not want my workplace to be my family. I have my family outside of the workplace. I do not want to feel because actually, sometimes they're pretty toxic and you can't ever leave them, right? Your family is your family. You could never leave your family. So I don't, that one is just generally like, if someone says that, like dig in a little bit, ask, okay, tell me, how does that play out? What does that look like? Explain that to me. Another question that I tell people to ask in the interview process is, I see that your culture or your values of your organization are X, Y, and Z. How does that practically play out in this group or on this team or the organization in general? Because an organization can say my values are integrity, but if they're not very clear on how that actually works, what are the values there for? They're kind of a waste of breath and a waste of energy. And so it's really understanding understanding, asking that question and getting specifics is kind of like reverse interviewing, right? So it's like if someone asks you tell me about a time when blank, blank, blank. I want to ask you, tell me about a time when your organization showcased integrity. What does that look like on this team? And then I would want to understand the things that people most care about is like, what does my work-life balance look like, or integration, right? So asking a question or being really observant about when are they sending emails? What is their style? How are they communicating with you? What's their follow-up like? All of those are indicators of what the culture looks like at the organization, more so than what's on their careers page, which can be helpful as a jumping off point and pulling stuff from there and asking questions about it. But that should not be the main thing that you focus on, because here's the trick. Organizations are spending millions upon millions of dollars on their employer brand, which is basically marketing for talent acquisition. And so a lot of people don't know that. And so they look at their careers page and like, this looks really flashy. Oh my gosh, this looks an amazing place to work. And 9 times out of 10, it probably is to the right person, but you might not be the right person to work there.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I actually worked on an employer brand team within an organization before, and you are spot on that they spend millions on videos and footage and testimonials and all the things that are going to want somebody to come and work for that organization. So it's really important to do what Jena said there, is that reverse interview. Tell me about a time when integrity was lived out in the day-to-day. Tell me about a time when you were ready to be promoted. How did that go down? Like really getting into understanding those examples is so, so critical. So thank you for sharing those examples. And yes, the whole family thing, just no, it's just not.
It's a pet peeve for me.
It really is. That's just not how work should be. There needs to be a line.
There needs to be a line. I will say that my last employer, so I was kind of in the business career coaching, similar to you, Jen. That's how we met for like about 5 years, and then took a break and went in-house in an organization. And the CEO would say that we're like a family. And he was like, I don't understand why people don't like that. So I had to explain to him why people don't like that. However, I will say for that organization, how it practically played out, I'll give you a perfect example. I had a child when I worked there. How they treated me like family is they sent me flowers. They checked in to see how I was doing. Like those are examples, positive examples of how we're like a family. So we did have the positive traits of that, but I still told him it was a bad employer branding move. We shouldn't say that.
Well, I guess that leads to like another piece of this is how these things are defined within an organization. So you might see something on a website, or you might talk to somebody and hear a word like family or integrity or whatever. But what does that mean to them? And asking those examples can help you gather the right information on whether or not you're going to enjoy working there and be, comfortable and it's going to work out in the long run. So I think that's a great example of what that meant for them. And then even though it kind of is a buzzword or a red flag, understanding that example takes it a step further and you can make that decision. So
Context is everything, right? And I think what you just said about the definitions is we as job seekers, similar to organizations are doing this. They're defining it. They're getting clear about what they mean by culture, what they mean by their values, what they mean by what makes it a great place to work. So often job seekers don't spend take a second to look back and think, what does that mean to me? And then write it down.
Yes.
What does it mean to me to be what does an ideal culture look like? Pick out your top 3 things, because you can't have everything, right? You can't have probably the super flexible schedule and make $1 million a year, and you also get your pet insurance paid for. You probably can't have all the things, but what are the things that are most important to you? When I was transitioning out of finance and I went and worked for a company called The Muse, themuse.com, which that's actually how Jen and I met.
Yeah.
And the thing that was most important for me in that season of life, which you also talked about, because culture and priorities around what culture means looks different in different seasons of life. I was single. I was living in New York. I wanted to travel to see my friends. The most important piece to me was I got to not dress in a suit. 1, I know that sounds stupid, but at the time that was important to me.
Yes.
And then 2, I wanted the opportunity to have flexible work. I wanted to be able to travel to see my family, to see my friends, to go to new places. I was at that season of life and they had unlimited vacation. I absolutely took advantage of that when I worked there. And that was good for that season of life. Fast forward, when I went back into the workforce, working for somebody else, I was at a small organization. The priority for me was stability. because I was married now and I was about to have a mortgage and about to have a kid. I wanted maternity leave. Like it's just different priorities and different benefits for different seasons. And that's okay too. But you have to know what your priority is and what culture, how you define culture for yourself in the season you're in.
Yes, couldn't agree more. And the whole thing around clothing does not sound stupid. I talk to people all the time that just want to get out of like the cage of feeling like they have to be dressed a certain way and, they just want to be themselves. And that's part of a company culture. So if you dress a certain way and you want to feel comfortable, then look for that in the company's culture. And I love that you shared the different seasons and how at one point you wanted to travel and do all the things. And then now it's more about stability. I mean, that's really critical and really good examples on how this can evolve and change over time. And it's okay to evolve and change over time. You're growing, you're expanding. And that's what careers are all about in the modern workforce, quite frankly.
Yeah, totally. Well, it wasn't. Like my father-in-law worked for the same company. He's about to retire in September. Super excited for him. But he worked for basically the same organization they got acquired, but it's essentially been the same organization for the past like 30 plus years, right? Yeah. It's looked different for him because the workforce looked different back then. We're in this wild, wild west, and it's only going to get wilder. It is okay. I also like to remind people that it is okay to be really clear about what you want and not apologize for that.
Yes.
We often do this thing in the job seeker market. And I get it. Sometimes we need a job and we just need a job. And there's no shame in that. But if we have the opportunity to be a little bit more strategic, you are an asset to an organization. You are coming in to provide your skill, your services so that the organization can meet their goals, act like it. And part of it is defining for yourself, what is the culture I want to be a part of? What's a priority for me? What's going to help my career and my family? That is okay to ask for and to want.
Yes, yes, and yes. I do this presentation with organizations and we talk about the fact that we spend a third of our lives at work, 90,000 hours or more we're going to spend working in our lifetimes. We need to make it something that we want to be doing and that we're at least looking forward to majority of the time. Otherwise, we're going to go down a dark hole and end up sick and all the things. And that's just not worth it. So
no, it's not.
So Jena, in your experience, how can folks cut through all the noise and get to the real story behind the company culture? We kind of talking about in between the lines here, like talking to people that do the work, obviously, but how does that actually happen? How can people do that?
Yeah, so I think there needs to be pre-work. So almost like you need to pre-qualify. Similar to how an organization is sifting through a bunch of resumes to bring in for an interview, you need to sift through a bunch of company cultures and really understand what do they have to offer, what's my priority, who do I want to target. And so the best way to do that is by doing your research. So the careers page, I'm obviously going to plug, we have a podcast called Culture Uncovered where we go behind the scenes of cool companies to work for. I did that because I wanted people to get exposed to maybe not just the FANGs of the world, the Facebooks, the Amazons, the ones that you hear about. They seem like really cool, quote unquote, places to work, learning that maybe they're not, but to find other organizations that actually do have interesting culture for the right person. So we go behind the scenes of that, do some research there. Honestly, ChatGPT, you can find out some information from use that as a tool. But just do your research and figure out what's important to you. And then from there, start to be a little bit more strategic with your job search and going after those organizations. Once you get in the door, make sure that you have a laundry list of questions to ask. And don't be scared of asking questions. An interview is a mutual process. You are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. And you better believe it's super, super important that you're asking questions to figure out if it's a good fit for you, because it's actually not to the benefit of the organization or to you if you have to switch in 6 months from now because it's a really bad fit. So a question that you can ask in the interview, and we actually ask in our interviews on the Culture Uncovered podcast, is who's not a good fit for this organization? Like, what are the characteristics of somebody that would not thrive here? And you're going to get some interesting examples, right? And then you can also ask the question of what type of personality really fits in here? And so if they're if they're not able to articulate that, that's a red flag.
Yeah, for sure.
If they are able to articulate it and be honest about it, that's a great way to understand, to opt yourself in or out. Another question that we ask on the Culture Uncovered podcast that I think you could ask as well is, I saw all these wonderful things about your organization. You do this, you do this, you do this. Tell me what's not working as it relates to culture and where you're trying to invest in the organization and into your people. Now, are they going to give you all of the skinny and all of the tea? Absolutely not. They're not. Just like you're not going to tell them all the skeletons in your closet. There has to be some, but you're going to get some ideas. I would pay attention to body language. I would pay attention to what they're thinking about, what they end up saying, how they talk about the team. Like you're going to understand a little bit about it and then trust your gut.
Yes.
A lot of times we're like, no, maybe it's not really a red flag. Maybe it's just like, like in between a green and a yellow. No, if it's a red flag, trust your gut.
Mm-hmm.
Usually your gut's not wrong. And then always the biggest indicator of that subculture on a team is your direct manager. Understanding, do I like this person? Do I want to work alongside this person is so, so, so important. I'll give you an example. I was interviewing for an organization and I really liked the head leadership who I was interviewing with in the process. I thought I was going to be reporting to them. That was kind of what was communicated to me. I get there on day one. I'm reporting to somebody totally different that I didn't expect. And we did not mesh as well. I did not last there. And so, it's no one's real fault. I mean, I could say it's the organization's fault for not being very clear about reporting structure, but being very clear for yourself about who am I reporting to and do I like this person?
Yeah.
And you just know if you like them or not.
Hey there, beloved listener. It's Jen here, and I'm popping in with a quick invitation just for you. I know how hard it can be to navigate your career, especially in a world of work that's constantly changing. That's why I created The Gathering Ground. It's an insider circle for steady, heart-based support to help you grow with clarity, confidence, and community. Inside the Gathering Ground membership, you're invited to join us for weekly office hours to ask questions and stay grounded, exclusive pricing on one-on-one coaching, seasonal goal setting and reflection workshops. You'll receive a secret monthly newsletter with fresh tools and inspiration. There's a growing library of networking scripts, checklists, and career development tools designed to support you throughout your career. And best of all, a kind, generous community of professionals who just get it. So whether you're staying, shifting, or starting fresh, this is your space to be supported and stretched in the best way possible. It's just $97 to join, then $27 a month. Flexible, affordable, and no long-term commitment. To get started, head on over to flourish.careers/community and answer a few quick questions. Based on your responses, I'll send you a personalized development plan so you can begin right away with clear human support. No bots, no templates, just thoughtful guidance to move forward with confidence. Because you deserve a long, radiantly happy, and healthy career. I cannot wait to see you on the inside. Now, back to the episode. Yeah, so much goodness in this. So first, I definitely want to put another plug in for the Culture Uncovered podcast. And Jenna, one of the things that jumped out at me when I listened to a couple episodes is that you do ask the question, like, tell me what isn't working here or something that you guys are working on. And I think that that's different. That stands out to me because not a lot of people are willing to answer that question. And so the fact that these folks that you're talking to are willing to share a little bit there is a really big deal. And that can tell you it's a great company to work for because there's some type of transparency. And so
and also it'll tell you, like, I've had some chief people officers who kind of skirt around that.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And I make it as a mental note for myself to be like, okay, if we're not, and then I've had some that are like, we're really bad at manager training. We've not invested there. I'm like, I love you for saying that.
Yes.
Thank you for being honest. We need to hear that. Okay. So if you know that you're going into a situation where you are going to be maybe a new manager, you want to get promoted into manager, and you know that, like, actually they don't got the manager training right now. I have to know that going in so that I can make an educated choice for myself.
Right.
Anytime I'm bringing on I've hired a couple of career strategists recently, and I tell them up front, I say, I'm building this plane while I'm flying it. If you're not okay with that, I totally understand, but that's what we're working with right now. I'm building the systems. I don't have it all down. If you're the type of person who likes process, I'm not your girl.
Right.
At least in the season.
Yes. And that's so important because you don't want people making the wrong decisions and then turnover and retention goes out the window and you're back at square one from an organization standpoint. You want people to be happy and to stay. So why not be transparent and upfront to get the right people that are going to, and somebody else, by the way, is going to love to help you build the plane while it's flying versus somebody that really values process. So yeah, I think it's really important just to understand, that about the organization and the transparency. So, and you also shared a bunch of questions there that I think are really helpful. So folks, if you want to get those questions, go back and rewind and jot those down as you go into interviews. And I also can't help but mention informational interviews as well. So like getting a peek under the tent before there's a job at stake can also kind of like level the playing field a little bit. So it kind of takes like, you're not selling anything, they're not selling anything. You're just trying to gather information to make the most informed decision can also be helpful.
Yeah, one tactic that I've encouraged some of our clients, we do outplacement, and we also have some career coaches that are on our platform, and so they recommend this as well. But if you go to a company's LinkedIn page, you can actually search for people that used to work at a certain place. And so that you can find somebody that used to work, let's just use Amazon. You can find someone that used to work at Amazon that maybe had that same title that you're looking for. And you can reach out to them saying, hey, this is super random. I stumbled across your name on LinkedIn. I'm doing market research about different organizations. I'm interested in potentially applying to Amazon. Would you mind answering 3 questions about the culture? This is completely anonymous. It just helps me make a more educated choice. You might get some really good, and you might get nothing, right? Someone might be like, I'm not responding to that, but you might actually get people that are willing to help. So to your point, the informational interview, I think is an important piece to the puzzle. One, because it gets you networking, which is like the number one way to find a job, period, end of story. We could talk about that all day long, but it also helps you practice and understand what's important to you.
Yes, absolutely agree with you. And I love the idea of reaching out to somebody that used to work for an organization to get a little bit more information. And sometimes people are like, oh, I'm going to go to Glassdoor. And that's fine. You can definitely go and do that. But if you can go with the questions that you want answered and reach out to somebody that used to work there, that's going to be even better than a review that's posted online. So
yeah, the thing about Glassdoor, it can be useful, right? In that it can give you like, if you're seeing a general theme, I think that that's helpful. You could even bring up in an interview. I noticed on Glassdoor that this is the theme that I'm seeing. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, that's a really bold question. People don't want to ask that, but you know what? I don't see any reason not to ask that.
I would.
And I would say, like, I know I would pre-qualify, right? Say, I know Glassdoor can be a dumpster fire. I know it's not always truthful. It just can be angry employees. But I was seeing this theme. Can you speak to that at all? Has this been an issue? I'm okay if it has. I just want to know upfront what I'm getting myself into for the benefit of both of us.
Yes.
That is a leadership question. And it's a question that you ask if you kind of have like what I call a hands up approach. So you're not desperate for something. You are having your hands up being like, I want to find the next strategic right move for me. And that's a question that a leader would ask.
Yes,
right?
yes. And if I'm someone interviewing and I hear that question, I'm proud that this candidate did their research. Yeah. I feel like, wow, they're strong enough to actually ask that question. I may or may not have information depending on what the situation was, but I'm glad that they asked and I'm going to do my best to respond to that. So I think that it definitely elevates you as a candidate.
Yeah, you can't look at it as like a volleyball match. You got to look at it as a partnership.
Yes,
like
exactly.
you are mutually, they're performing too. They need to be performing as well as you're performing in an interview.
Right. Yep. It's like that business conversation. It's a two-way street there. So now let's talk about getting interviews. So this job market is wild. And so what are some creative or unconventional ways you've seen folks land interviews?
Yeah. So I saw this girl on LinkedIn where she was interested in, I don't know if she actually landed the interview. So we'll hold that. But I love a creative opportunity, right? So she was interested in working at Poppy, which those like prebiotic drinks or whatever. Yeah. She created a Poppy-specific resume, posted it on LinkedIn. The thing went viral. And she got people from Poppy that were like, hey, we're not hiring for a role in this right now, but we're going to put your resume on file. Like one of the talent acquisition leaders. So again, it's all about getting noticed. Right now, the key is to do something different.
Yes.
Do not do what most people do, which is apply online and wait.
No.
I literally was we have a whole system, a whole process in our outplacement materials. So when people get laid off from jobs, organizations will hire us to help with the career transition. And we talk about this, we outline this. And then I'm coaching one of the people through. And I was like, have you reached out to anybody? She goes, well, no. I said, well, why? She goes, well, I'm not sure if anyone's going to respond. I said, okay, they probably won't. It definitely won't if you don't.
If that's what you think. Yeah.
If that's what you think, right? And it's not going to work 100% of the time. You have to go in knowing it's a long game and it's all about getting noticed. I have interviewed all these chief people officers on my podcast, directors of talent acquisition. And the last question I typically ask them is, how does somebody get their resume seen? 99% of them have said, reach out to someone on our team and tell us why you're interested in our organization and what you have to offer.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not doing that, at the bare minimum, you should be.
Yeah.
Other things people are doing, Loom videos, making a video pitch, sending that along. Again, I've had one candidate, one of my clients in the past, Lauren, you know Lauren, she actually created a website that includes her portfolio.
Right.
She was in an interview and somebody asked her a question, like the CEO asked her a question, and she's like, "Oh, let me actually show you on my website." He was like, "This is the most impressive thing I've seen." She got the job.
Oh, yay.
So like there are lots of different out of the box ways. You should be listening to the Culture Uncovered podcast. You should then reach out to somebody on that team and say, "Hey, I heard you on the Culture Uncovered podcast. I'm really interested in this role. Here's 3 ways I think I can bring value." What not to do when reaching out is to reach out and say, "Hey, here's my resume. I'm interested in this role." Don't do that. If you're going to send your resume, say, "Hey, I know that you have a system. I did apply online. I also wanted to put a face to the name. Here's where I think I can create value." Again, it's all about what you can do for them, not what they can do for you.
Yeah.
I've also had another client where she started posting on LinkedIn as a job seeker, saying like, "Here's what I'm really good at. Here's what I'm looking for." And then she started to create content about her zone of genius. So Jen and I have created content as business owners, but I actually think that job seekers can differentiate themselves by the content they create on the subjects that matter most to them. So if you're a marketing person, talk about different marketing things that are happening in the industry. Think about your ideal hiring manager and what do they care about? They want to know that you can do the job, that you're intelligent, that you have the soft skills to navigate around the organization. Start showing that with some of the content. So those are just some like very practical things. I mean, you could even go rogue and send something in person. Let's say that they are I say do what you can to stand out. That is the key.
Yes.
But the number one way to stand out is person to person.
Yeah.
Meaning you should always be networking throughout your entire career. I don't care if you're looking for a job or not looking for a job. You should always be connecting with people in your industry, outside of your industry, because that is how people get jobs still. Even with the AI bots, even if you've like done all the things to do a somersault and try to get your resume to be seen. It's just a bunch of bots talking to bots right now. And we're seeing it's a huge problem for organizations. Organizations are noticing it's a problem. So be more human. That's how you get in.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, Jena, in the back of my mind, I hear you saying always be networking. When we work together, you always said that. And it's so true. That is the number one thing you can do for your career is to build relationships and build your network in a really authentic way that works for you. And you just heard a million different examples here of what you could do to get noticed. And the key is to do what works for you. I love the podcast idea. I actually had a client that did the same thing. They heard one of the leaders on a podcast and reached out like through LinkedIn or through email, whatever it was, just to say, "Hey, I heard you on this podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation. Here's 3 things I loved. By the way, I see you have this job open." And it started a conversation for them. So same thing with somebody posts a blog or shares content or a book or whatever it is, like sharing a compliment on someone else's work is a really easy way to start a conversation. And that's really what you want to do, is to start a conversation in all of the noise that's out there online.
Yeah, I think anytime that you can create value for somebody else anytime you can create value for somebody else, that's beneficial. Some people ask me about recruiters and I say, recruiters are helpful. They don't work for you. They work for organizations and they try to find, good fits for the organization. But let's just say that you are leveraging a recruiter. You've gotten into a good relationship. You're not a good fit for whatever role that they have. Find somebody that is a good fit, a peer of yours, and refer them to that recruiter. That recruiter's not going to forget you.
Again, good call. Yeah.
Always be thinking about how can I create value? How can I create value? Ask ChatGPT. How can I create value for these are my 5 contacts? Here's my eventual goal. What are some ways that I can uniquely create value for them that may be different that will make me stand out?
Yeah.
Like use the AI tools as a brainstorming sparring partner to, again, think outside the box.
Yes. The word that's coming up as you're saying all of this is memorable. Like figure out how to be memorable. It might not be right in that moment for that specific job, but in the long run, you just never know where that network or that relationship could lead to. So be memorable, be human. That's the story here. So
yeah.
Okay, so 2 more questions as we wrap up. So I'm curious. So we've been talking all about this world of work. Obviously, all the traditional rules have kind of gone out the window. I've been saying this for a few years now.
Yeah.
So do you have a story of someone that really kind of just like broke the traditional rules of job search and landed a job that you could share with us?
I can share my own story. How about this?
Let's do it.
As we know, I had my career coaching business. I was doing that for a while. I had no intention of leaving. I wasn't doing a job search. I was out to dinner with my mentor and her husband, and we're sitting down there, and he's like, "So how's business going?" And I turn to him and I go, "Honestly, Steve, I'm sick of myself. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of myself. I don't love it." And he kind of giggled. So again, broke a rule. Like I basically told him it wasn't going well. Like I was not thriving. And he goes, "Now that you're talking, I actually know a guy who's hiring for this role that's not posted anywhere, doesn't exist online. I would have never heard of this company." He said, "I think you guys should just meet. I don't know if it's a good fit or not, but I think you should just meet." I end up meeting with this guy. We end up having a lot in common. We know similar people. And it was a 6-month process to eventually get hired to work for that organization. That organization has now been a huge revenue driver for me in this iteration of my business, for my husband. I mean, the amount of network that we've been exposed to because of that. But I broke the rules in the sense that I actually wasn't searching.
Yeah.
Searching, told him it wasn't going well, basically said all the bad things. But again, the key here is the network.
Yeah,
the relationship. And I think what also people can learn from this story is to talk about when we feel fear because we don't want to say, "Oh, I'm unhappy," or "I'm not doing well," or "This isn't the right fit for me," because we're embarrassed and it feels very vulnerable. But actually, I would say that talking to the people that are in your immediate circles where you do feel comfortable with that, do it early and often because you never know who they might know.
Yes. And the other thing that stands out here too is that you weren't necessarily looking, you weren't asking for anything. You were just sharing what was happening, and it led down the road to so many different opportunities. And that's what I find too, is that people genuinely want to help other humans. They just need to know how, right?
Yes,
so
100%.
Sharing what's not working or, that you're not happy, that's okay. It's real life. It's real talk. And so momentum can be helpful. Yeah.
Momentum is key in that. Like every single one of the private clients that I've had over the past year, they weren't talking about it. They didn't have any moment. Nothing was happening.
Right.
And then as soon as they start talking to people
about it,
literally the talking, the actually verbalizing it has gotten them into doors. They've had more conversations. They've reached out to people. It is, quite frankly, easier to network before you need something than when you need something, which is why I've always said, always be networking. Because when you do have a need and you've provided all this value, it's so much easier to ask somebody for something.
It is. I totally agree. And that give and take, what you were saying before, how can you add value as well? So it's always that give and take and being of service.
Always ask that question at the end. I just want to make sure I say this. Always ask the question at the end of any networking conversation. What can I do for you? What are you working on? How can I help? Who can I connect you with?
Yes.
And I have had so many people look at me like, "Oh my gosh, thank you for asking that. No one ever asks me that." I don't actually know right now, but I will think of that. Or I've had people like, "Hey, I'm trying to meet XYZ." Then I make those connections. That has been the biggest opportunity driver in the past year for me.
Yes. And friends listening, I can tell you that Jena does this every single time I see her. She says to me, "Jen, how can I help you? Who can I connect you with?" This is something that Jena lives, and it's so true. It stands out and it's so lovely, and it helps build the relationship and stay connected. We've stayed connected since 2019. So
it's
very
not
simple.
rocket science.
It's very simple. Yeah. Oh
we
my
just
goodness.
forget because it's not
so
if you can make it not about you and make it about the other person, it's going to be about you.
Yes, absolutely. and it'll make you memorable and all of the things that we've been talking about throughout this conversation. So, oh my goodness, this has been so much fun. Jena, as we wrap up, the question I ask everyone, your flourishing favorite. So we're making a library of all the best professional development books out there and podcasts and resources. So do you have a book or podcast or resource that has a significant impact on your career that you could share with us?
Yes, I think the book Designing Your Life is one of my favorite books. It's written by design thinking professors. I think out of Stanford. I kind of forget. It's been a while since I've read it, but it's very practical. It makes you think differently about your career and your life. I used to send it to clients, and it gives you very practical things to follow step by step.
Yeah, it's a really good one. I'm surprised it hasn't been mentioned yet. So
yeah,
thank you for bringing that one up. We're going to definitely add that to the show notes. So Jena, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all this wisdom about company culture and landing interviews. It has been such a joy. Where can people connect with you online? We have both of your podcasts. We'll make sure those are listed.
Yeah. LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. Tell me that you listen to this podcast, and I would love to send you a code for a free resume template.
Ooh, fabulous. We'll make sure that we add that in there as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to be here with you and just in general, and love your podcast. So people keep listening.
Thank you, Jena. And listeners, as always, the notes from today's episode will be on the blog at flourish.careers/blog. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.